Kev Voren had seen many species die. In his 300 years as an archivist of the Galactic Coalition, he had recorded the fall of 17 civilizations. He had watched proud empires crumble into dust. He had documented the final screams of entire worlds. It was his job, and he had learned to do it without feeling much of anything at all. So when the Coalition assigned him to observe the human Drekkinar War, he felt nothing but mild academic interest. The humans were a young species. They had only been traveling among the stars for 400 years. They were small, soft, and short-lived. They had no natural weapons, no armored skin, no venom glands. By every measure that mattered, they were unremarkable. The Drekkinar, on the other hand, were conquerors. They had dominated 3 galactic sectors through pure brutality. Their warships were massive. Their soldiers were bred for killing. They had never lost a war, because they did not stop fighting until their enemies were extinct. When the Drekkinar demanded that humanity surrender its colony worlds, the Coalition expected the humans to comply. Surrender was a logical choice. Surrender meant survival. Every other species had learned this lesson, but the humans said no. Kev Voren remembered reading the human response to the Drekkinar ultimatum. It was short. It contained a phrase that his translation, software, struggled with. Something about the Drekkinar performing an anatomically impossible act upon themselves. The archivist had to ask 3 different human linguists before he understood that it was an insult of the most vulgar kind. The Drekkinar responded by declaring total war. Now Kev Voren stood in the observation deck of Station Neutral 7, a Coalition outpost orbiting the Kepler frontier. This was where the first battle would take place. This was where humanity would most likely die. His job was to record it all for posterity. He adjusted his recording equipment and looked out at the stars. The human fleet was assembling in the distance. He counted their ships through his optical enhancers. 340 vessels. Some of them were military warships. Others appeared to be converted cargo haulers, mining vessels. Even passenger liners with weapons bolted onto their hulls. It was pathetic. It was desperate. It was exactly what he had expected. The Drekkinar fleet would arrive with 800 warships. Each one was 5 times the size of the largest human vessel. The mathematics were simple. The humans would be destroyed within hours, perhaps minutes. Kev Voren had already written the first draft of his historical summary. He just needed to fill in the details of how they died. A sound behind him made his antennae twitch. He turned to see 2 humans entering the observation deck. They wore military uniforms covered in patches, and insignia he did not recognize. One was male, tall and broad with gray hair at his temples. The other was female, younger, with dark hair pulled back from her face. "You must be the Coalition observer," the male said. He extended his hand in the human greeting gesture. "Commander Danny Holloway. This is Lieutenant Katie Marsh." Kev Voren touched the human's hand briefly with his manipulator limb. The skin was warm, fragile. He could feel the pulse of blood beneath the surface. "I am Kev Voren," he said. "I am here to document the coming engagement." "Document," Lieutenant Marsh repeated. She smiled, but it did not reach her eyes. "That's a polite way of saying you're here to watch us die." Kev Voren considered lying. He decided against it. "Yes, the Coalition believes this conflict will be brief. I am here to record the outcome for historical purposes." He expected anger. He expected fear. He expected the humans to rage against the unfairness of their situation, to beg the Coalition for help, to show some sign of the desperation that surely gripped them. Commander Holloway laughed. It was not a bitter laugh or a frightened laugh. It was genuine amusement, as if Kev Voren had told a particularly good joke. "Well," Holloway said, "I hope you brought plenty of storage space for your recordings. This might take a while." Kev Voren did not understand. He looked at the human fleet again, then back at Holloway. "Commander, the Drekkinar outnumber you significantly. Their technology is superior. Their ships are larger. Their soldiers are stronger. How can you possibly—" "Have you ever heard of a place called Thermopylae?" Lieutenant Marsh interrupted. Keth Voren searches memory banks. I have not. It's an old story from our homeworld, she said. A very long time ago, 300 of our warriors held a mountain pass against an army of over 100,000. They knew they would die. They fought anyway. They held that pass for 3 days. What happened to them? They died, every single one of them. Marsh's smile changed into something harder, something that made Keth Voren's secondary heart skip a beat. But they took so many enemies with them that the tide of the entire war changed. They became immortal. Their names are still remembered 3,000 years later. Keth Voren stared at her. In all his centuries of observation, he had never heard a species speak about death this way. Most beings fled from death. They bargained with it, begged for mercy, surrendered everything to avoid it. They did not embrace it. They did not smile at it. You expect to lose, he said slowly, and yet you will fight anyway. Commander Holloway stepped closer to the observation window. His reflection overlapped with the distant human fleet, his face superimposed on the ships that would carry his people into battle. Let me tell you something about humans, he said quietly. We are not the strongest species. We are not the smartest. We are not the fastest or the toughest. But we have one quality that has carried us through every disaster, every war, every extinction-level threat we have ever faced. What quality is that? Holloway turned to face him. His eyes were calm, steady, burning with something Keth Voren could not identify. We do not quit, Holloway said. Ever. The universe has been trying to kill us since the moment we crawled out of the mud. It has thrown ice ages at us. Plagues, famines, asteroids. We have survived them all, not because we are special, not because we are chosen, but because every time death reaches for us, we spit in its face and keep going. The Drekken AR think they can break us. They are wrong. They can kill us, but they cannot break us. And there's a difference. The commander nodded once to Keth Voren, then turned and walked toward the exit. Lieutenant Marsh followed. At the doorway, she paused and looked back. Make sure you get all on record, she said. Future generations should know what happened here. Then she was gone. Keth Voren stood alone in the observation deck. For a long time, he watched the human fleet continue to assemble. He thought about what the commander had said. He thought about 300 warriors holding a pass against 100,000 enemies. He opened his personal log and began to write. Initial observation, he recorded. The human species faces certain destruction. Coalition projections give them a survival probability of less than 3%. All logical indicators suggest they will be extinct within 1 standard month. He paused. His manipulator limbs hovered over the recording device. However, he continued slowly, I am beginning to suspect that logic may not apply to this species. They do not behave like prey. They behave like something else entirely. Something I do not yet have a name for. He saved the entry and returned his gaze to the stars. Somewhere out there, the Drekken AR fleet was approaching. Somewhere out there, history was about to be made. Keth Voren did not know it yet, but he would never look at the universe the same way again. The Drekken AR fleet arrived 3 days later. 800 warships tore through the fabric of space and emerged like a swarm of metal predators. Each vessel was massive, covered in weapons and armor. Their hulls were painted with the symbols of conquered worlds, trophies from 100 victories. Keth Voren watched from the observation deck as the enemy fleet took formation. His recording devices captured everything. The coalition observers around him were already writing their final reports. Some had begun drafting condolence messages to send to Earth after the battle. They spoke in quiet voices about what a shame it was, how the humans had shown such promise, how unfortunate that they had chosen to fight instead of surrender. The human fleet held position. 340 ships against 800. They did not retreat. They did not scatter. They simply waited. The Drekken AR commander broadcast a message on all frequencies. Keth Voren's translator converted the harsh clicking language into words he could understand. Humans, the commander said, you have one final chance. Surrender now and we will be merciful. Some of you will be allowed to survive as servants. Your world will become part of our empire. Resist, and you will be erased from existence. Every man, woman, and child, every record of your civilization, every trace that you ever existed. Choose. The human response came 30 seconds later. It was not from the fleet commander. It was from a single ship, a small destroyer called the Relentless. The captain's voice was calm, almost bored. This is Captain Ben Torres of the USS Relentless. On behalf of the human race, I would like to offer the following response. There was a pause. Then music began to play. It was loud, aggressive, full of screaming vocals and pounding drums. Kev Voren later learned it was something called rock and roll. The Drekken AR commander did not respond. He simply ordered the attack. What happened next would haunt Kev Voren for the rest of his long life. The Drekken AR charged forward in their standard formation. It was a strategy that had crushed dozens of species. They would overwhelm the enemy with superior numbers and firepower, breaking their lines and picking off survivors one by one. The humans did not try to match them ship for ship. They knew they could not win that way. Instead, they did something that made Kev Voren's blood freeze in his veins. They charged directly into the Drekken AR formation, not carefully, not strategically. They accelerated to maximum speed and drove straight into the heart of the enemy fleet, like a blade into flesh. The Drekken AR were not prepared for this. Their weapons were designed for medium-range combat. They expected enemies to maintain safe distances, to trade fire from afar. They did not expect their enemies to close to point-blank range and keep coming. The first human cruiser to fall was the Valor. Its engines were destroyed by concentrated fire. It began to drift, bleeding atmosphere from a dozen wounds. The Drekken AR ships moved in to finish it off, but the Valor was not dead yet. Kev Voren watched in disbelief as the crippled ship turned toward the nearest Drekken AR carrier. Its remaining engines flared. It was accelerating. The Drekken AR tried to move aside. They were too slow. The Valor struck the carrier at full speed. Both ships exploded in a fireball that consumed 3 other vessels nearby. Then it happened again. The destroyer's swift justice, its weapons gone, its hull cracked open, steered itself into a Drekken AR battleship. The frigate Defiant, burning from stem to stern, crashed into an enemy command vessel. Ship after ship, the humans did not retreat when damaged. They aimed their dying vessels at the enemy and kept fighting until the very end. The coalition observers were screaming. Some were crying. Kev Voren could not move. He could only watch and record. Captain Ben Torres of the Relentless led his ship through the chaos. His voice continued to broadcast on open channels, and Kev Voren realized with horror that the man was laughing. "Come on." Torres shouted over the explosions. "Is that all you have? We've survived worse than you. We've survived ice ages. We've survived plagues. We've survived each other. You think you scare us." A Drekken AR missile struck the Relentless. The ship shuddered. Fires erupted across its hull. Torres kept talking. "Let me tell you something, you ugly lizards. My grandfather fought in a war called World War II. He was 18 years old. He stormed a beach while machine guns tried to cut him in half. He watched his friends die in the sand. And you know what? He kept going. He walked through hell and came out the other side. That is what humans do. That is who we are." Another missile hit. The bridge was on fire now. Kev Voren could see it through the visual feeds. Torres began to recite something. His voice had changed. It was quiet now, almost peaceful. "Do not go gentle into that good night," he said. "Rage, rage against the dying of the light." Kev Voren did not understand the words. He would learn later that it was poetry, an ancient human art form about fighting death. The Relentless turned toward a Drekken AR dreadnought. Its engines burned white-hot as it accelerated. "Torres out," the captain said. Then his ship struck the dreadnought, and both vessels vanished in nuclear fire. The battle lasted 9 hours. 9 hours of hell and fire and screaming metal. 9 hours of humans dying by the thousands and taking their enemies with them. When it was over, The human fleet had lost 187 ships. The Drekanair had lost 312. The remaining Drekanair vessels retreated. Keth Voren learned a new word that day. The humans called it ramming. It was the act of deliberately crashing your own ship into an enemy. It was not a tactic. It was a philosophy. If you were going to die anyway, you made sure to take something with you. He also learned another word, spite. The humans defined it as doing something purely to hurt your enemy, even if it cost you everything. They were proud of it. They considered it a virtue. The coalition observers sat in stunned silence. Their reports would need to be completely rewritten. The humans had not been annihilated. They had won. Against all logic, against all probability, they had won. Keth Voren opened his personal log with trembling limbs. Second observation, he recorded, the first battle is over. The humans have achieved an impossible victory. They have driven back the Drekanair through methods that no sane species would employ. They used their own dying ships as weapons. They crashed burning vessels into enemy formations without hesitation. They did not simply accept death. They weaponized it. He paused, trying to find the right words. I have observed many species in combat. I have seen courage and cowardice, strategy and desperation. But I have never seen anything like this. These humans do not fight like soldiers. They fight like something else. Something ancient and terrifying. He looked out at the debris field where hundreds of ships had died. Rescue vessels were moving through the wreckage, searching for survivors. And then he heard something that made his heart stop. It was coming from the human rescue channels. The survivors, the wounded, the men and women floating in escape pods and clinging to broken hulls. They were singing, even as they died, even as they bled out into the cold vacuum. They were singing. Keth Voren did not sleep that night. He sat in the darkness and listened to the human voices echo through space. He was beginning to understand why the universe had tried so hard to kill this species. And he was beginning to understand why it had failed. 3 weeks after the first battle, the Coalition Observation Team received permission to visit a human vessel. The carrier was called the Defiance, and it had survived the engagement with heavy damage. Repairs were still ongoing as Keth Voren's shuttle approached. He expected to find a ship of ghosts. These humans had just watched their friends die by the thousands. They had witnessed horrors that would break most species. Surely they would be traumatized, silent, hollow. He was wrong. The hangar bay was filled with noise. Humans were everywhere, welding damaged hull plates, carrying supplies, shouting instructions to each other. Music played from somewhere, that same aggressive sound he had heard during the battle. Several humans were laughing at a joke he could not hear. A young officer met him at the landing zone. She had dark skin and tired eyes, but she smiled when she saw him. You must be the observer, she said. I am Sergeant Megan Reyes. I'll be showing you around. Keth Voren followed her through the ship. He recorded everything. The cramped corridors. The exposed wiring where repair crews had not yet finished their work. The smell of recycled air and human sweat. May I ask you something? He said as they walked. Sure. How are your people functioning? You suffered massive casualties. By my calculations, over 40,000 humans died in the first battle alone. How are you still operating? Sergeant Reyes was quiet for a moment. Then she reached into her uniform and pulled out a small object. It was a piece of paper, worn and creased from being folded and unfolded many times. On it was an image of a small human child with curly hair and a gap-toothed smile. This is my daughter, Reyes said. Her name is Maria. She's 7 years old. She lives on a colony world called New Phoenix. If the Drekanair win this war, they will kill her. They will kill every child on that planet. They will burn everything we have ever built. She put the photograph away. That is how we keep functioning. We don't have the option to stop. We don't have the luxury of falling apart. Every day we fight, our families get one more day of safety. So we fight. Keth Voren processed this. You volunteered for frontline duty. You chose to be here, away from your daughter. Yes, Why? Reyes looked at him with an expression he could not read. Because someone has to stand between the monsters and the children. Someone has to hold the line. If not me, then who? They continued the tour. Reyes took him to the mess hall, where dozens of humans were eating and talking. The atmosphere was not somber. It was almost cheerful. Kev Voren saw soldiers sharing food, playing games with cards, arguing about something called football. At one table, a group of humans sat with their heads bowed. A man in special robes was speaking words Kev Voren did not understand. What are they doing? He asked. Praying. Reyes said, We have many religions among our people, many beliefs about what happens after death. That man is a chaplain. He gives comfort to those who need it. You believe in an afterlife? Some of us do. Some believe in nothing. Some believe in something else entirely. She shrugged. We don't all agree. We never have, but we fight together anyway. This confused Kev Voren. In his experience, species were unified by shared beliefs. Different ideologies led to conflict, division, weakness. How could the humans function as a military force when they could not even agree on the nature of existence? Reyes seemed to sense his confusion. Let me introduce you to someone, she said. She led him to the pilot quarters, where a young man sat alone. He was cleaning a helmet that had been scratched and dented. His face was covered in burn scars. One of his eyes was artificial, glowing faintly blue. This is Lieutenant Kyle Vance, Reyes said, best pilot in the fleet. Vance looked up. His good, I studied Kev Voren with interest. You're the one writing about us. The historian. Archivist, yes. Good. Make sure you get the story right. He returned to cleaning his helmet. We're not heroes. We're just too stubborn to die. Kev Voren crouched down to the human's level. I have been trying to understand your species. I have observed your tactics, your weapons, your organization. But I still do not understand the core of it. What drives you? What makes you keep fighting when the odds are against you? Vance stopped cleaning. He seemed to think about the question for a long time. Do you know what spite is? He finally asked. I have heard the word. I do not fully understand it. Spite is when someone wants you to give up, and you refuse just to prove them wrong. It's when the universe itself seems designed to crush you, and you keep going purely out of stubbornness, not because you think you'll win, not because you have hope, but because giving up would mean they were right about you, and you'd rather die than let them be right. He held up the burned helmet. I got this fighting above a planet called Haven. The Drekken AR were bombing civilian shelters. My fighter was hit. I was on fire. My ejection system was broken. Every logical part of my brain was telling me to accept death. His scarred face twisted into something that might have been a smile. But I thought about those shelters. I thought about the families inside. I thought about the Drekken AR pilots laughing as they killed children. And I got angry. I got so angry that death seemed less important than hurting them back. So I pointed my burning fighter at the nearest enemy bomber and rammed it. Somehow I survived. Don't ask me how. He put down the helmet. That's spite. That's what drives us. The universe has been trying to kill humanity since the beginning. Ice ages, plagues, asteroids, other humans. Everything that could go wrong has gone wrong. And we're still here. Because every time something tries to destroy us, we get angry. And our anger is stronger than our fear. Kev Voren recorded every word. He was beginning to see something he had never seen in any other species. The humans were not brave in the traditional sense. They were terrified. They knew they might lose. They understood the mathematics of their situation. But they had found a way to turn their fear into fuel. They had learned to burn their terror and use it to power their will. Before he left with Defiance, Kev Voren made one final observation. He saw a soldier writing a letter by hand, using paper and ink. The old technology surprised him. What are you doing? He asked. The soldier looked up. She was young, barely an adult by human standards. Her name tag read Private Amy Cortez. Writing to my mom, she said, in case I don't make it home. You expect to die? I expect to fight. The dying part is up to fate. She folded the letter carefully. But if I do die, I want her to know I was thinking of her. I want her to know I wasn't afraid, even if I was. She sealed the letter and wrote an address on the outside. Kev Voren left the Defiance with his mind full of new information and new questions. He had come to observe a doomed species. Instead, he had found something far more complex. In his log that night, he wrote, "Every species fights to survive. This is basic biology. But humans fight for something more. They fight to matter. They fight so their deaths will have meaning. They write letters to their families. They pray to their gods. They carry photographs of their children into battle. They do not simply want to live. They want their lives to count for something." He paused. "I am beginning to find this species deeply unsettling, and I am not entirely sure why." 8 months into the war, the Drekkinar were winning. Kev Voren had watched the tide turn slowly. The first battle had been a shock to the Empire, but they had adapted. They learned to keep their distance from human ships. They developed new weapons that could destroy vessels before they got close enough to ram. They began targeting supply lines and civilian transports instead of military fleets. The mathematics were simple and brutal. For every Drekkinar ship destroyed, humanity lost 3. Their fleet was shrinking. Their resources were running out. Their colonies were being bombed into rubble. The Coalition expected surrender any day now. It was a logical choice. The humans had fought well, better than anyone had predicted. They had earned respect. But respect did not win wars. Ships did. Soldiers did. And the humans were running out of both. Kev Voren traveled to Earth to witness the end. He wanted to record the moment when humanity finally accepted defeat. It would be a historic occasion. The species that refused to quit would finally have to quit. He was wrong again. Earth was not preparing to surrender. Earth was preparing for total war. The first thing Kev Voren noticed was the noise. Factories ran constantly, filling the sky with smoke and the air with thunder. Ships were being built at an impossible rate. Workers labored around the clock, sleeping in shifts, eating at their stations. His guide was a woman named Narration, a government official assigned to handle Coalition observers. She looked exhausted. Dark circles surrounded her eyes, and her hands trembled slightly from too much caffeine. "How long have you been awake?" Kev Voren asked. 3 days, she said. "Maybe 4. I lost count. Is this sustainable?" She laughed. It was not a happy sound. "No, none of this is sustainable. We're burning ourselves out. Everyone knows it. But what choice do we have? Stop working and let our families die? That's not a choice. That's giving up." She took him to a factory in a city called Detroit. Thousands of humans worked inside, assembling fighter craft from raw materials. Many of them were old. Some were very young. He saw teenagers operating heavy machinery alongside grandparents. "Where are all the adults?" he asked. "Fighting," Laura said simply. "Or dead. The kids and the elderly are all we have left for factory work." A boy who looked no older than 15 was welding a hull plate. His face was focused, intense. He did not look like a child anymore. "That one," Laura said, pointing to him. "His father died at the Battle of Kepler. His mother is serving on a cruiser somewhere in the outer colonies. He dropped out of school to work here. Says he wants to build a ship that ends a war." Kev Voren approached the boy. "What is your name?" The boy looked up. Jake Morris." "Why are you doing this? You are young. You could hide. You could wait for the war to end." Jake's eyes were old beyond his years. "Hide where? The Drekkinar don't care how old you are. They don't spare children. I saw the footage from New Seattle. They bombed the school. 2,000 kids gone in a second." He returned to his welding. "I can't hold a gun yet, but I can build ships. So that's what I do." Kev Voren left the factory with a new understanding of humanity. They were not just a military force. They were an entire civilization at war. Every man, woman, and child had become a weapon. Later that day, he witnessed a broadcast from Admiral Danny Holloway. The man Keth Voren had met before the first battle now commanded the entire human fleet. His hair had gone completely gray. His face was lined with exhaustion, but his eyes still burned with that strange fire. The broadcast reached every human colony simultaneously. Billions of people stopped what they were doing to listen. "My fellow humans," Holloway began, "I am not going to lie to you. We are losing this war. Our fleet is outnumbered. Our resources are strained. Our casualties are mounting every day. The Drekken AR think they are grinding us down. They think if they kill enough of us, we will break. They think if they bomb enough of our cities, we will surrender." He paused. His jaw tightened. "They are wrong." His voice grew stronger. "They do not understand what they are fighting. They see a small species with inferior technology. They see easy prey. But they have made a terrible mistake. They have given us something to fight for. They have threatened our families, our children, our future, and now they will learn what happens when you corner humanity." He leaned closer to the camera. "We are not going to surrender. We are not going to negotiate. We are not going to stop. For every ship they destroy, we will build 2 more. For every soldier they kill, 10 more will take their place. We will fight them in space. We will fight them on our worlds. We will fight them with warships and with farming equipment and with our bare hands if we have to." His voice dropped to almost a whisper. "They think if they kill enough of us, we will stop. Let's teach them how wrong they are." The broadcast ended. Across human space, people returned to their work. Factories increased production. Recruitment centers were flooded with volunteers. Keth Voren visited a military hospital 2 days later. The wards were full of wounded soldiers. Many had lost limbs. Some had burns covering most of their bodies. The medical staff worked without rest, trying to save everyone they could. He stopped at the bed of a Marine named Sam Hutchins. The man had lost both legs in a boarding action. He was scheduled for prosthetic replacement, but the waiting list was long. "May I ask you something?" Keth Voren said. Hutchins looked at him. His face was pale from blood loss, but his eyes were clear. "Sure, not like I'm going anywhere. You have already sacrificed greatly. No one would blame you if you stopped fighting. You have done your duty." The Marine stared at him for a long moment. Then he laughed. "Stop fighting? Why would I do that? You cannot walk. You cannot hold a weapon. What more can you do?" Hutchins smiled. It was a terrible smile, full of teeth and something that looked like joy. "They haven't killed me yet. And until they do, I can still hurt them. I can train new soldiers. I can plan operations. I can do paperwork if I have to. As long as my brain works, I'm still dangerous." He tapped his head. "The Drekken AR made a mistake. They think the body is what matters. They don't understand that humans fight with something else, something they can't cut out of us." That night, Keth Voren sat alone in his quarters. He had witnessed many things during his centuries as an archivist. He had seen species fight and die. He had seen courage and desperation. But he had never felt afraid of a species before. He opened his personal log with trembling manipulators. 4th observation. "I have been recording this war for 8 months. I came here expecting to document the extinction of a minor species. Instead, I am witnessing something I cannot explain. The humans should have surrendered by now. Every calculation says they should have surrendered. But they refuse to accept the mathematics. They refuse to acknowledge reality." He paused. "I have finally identified the emotion I feel when I observe them. It is fear. I am afraid of humans. Not because they are powerful. They are not. Not because they are cruel. They are capable of great kindness. I am afraid of them because they cannot be broken. And a species that cannot be broken is the most dangerous thing in the universe." 2 years after the war began, the human fleet entered the Drekken AR home system. Keth Voren watched from a coalition observation vessel, positioned at a safe distance. He had been recording this conflict from the beginning. Now he would record its end. The human fleet had grown beyond anything the Coalition had predicted. 2,000 warships moved in formation, their hulls painted with the names of fallen comrades and destroyed colonies. Many of the ships were old, patched together with salvage parts. Some still bore the scars of previous battles. But they flew in perfect formation, a wall of steel and fury moving toward the Drekanaar homeworld. They were not alone. Behind the human fleet came 40 warships flying unfamiliar colors. They belonged to the Torati, a species that had been conquered by the Drekanaar 3 centuries ago. For generations, they had served the Empire as slaves. But they had watched the humans fight. They had seen a species refuse to surrender against impossible odds. And something had awakened in them. The Torati ambassador had delivered a simple message to human command. We would rather die free than live as slaves. Let us die beside you. Admiral Holloway had welcomed them. The Drekanaar home fleet was massive. 1,200 warships defended the planet that had spawned an empire of conquest. They had never been attacked here. No species had ever pushed them this far back. The very concept was unthinkable. Until now, the Drekanaar commander broadcast a message as the human fleet approached. His voice was different from the arrogant tone of 2 years ago. Voren detected something new in it, something that sounded almost like fear. Humans, you have fought well. You have earned the respect of the Imperium. But this is our home. We will defend it with everything we have. Turn back now, and we will offer peace. Fair terms. An end to the killing. Admiral Holloway's response was brief. You had your chance for peace 2 years ago. You chose war. Now you will have it. The battle began. Voren had seen many engagements during this war. He thought he understood human tactics by now. He was wrong. The humans had learned and adapted over 2 years of constant fighting. Their coordination was flawless. Their pilots flew like their ships were extensions of their bodies. They moved through the Drekanaar formation like water through cracks in stone. But the Drekanaar were fighting for their homeworld. They fought with the desperation of a cornered predator. Ships exploded on both sides. The space between the fleets filled with debris and fire. Admiral Holloway's flagship, the USS Perseverance, led the attack. It was not the largest ship in the fleet, but it flew at the front, drawing enemy fire. Holloway had always led from the front. He said it was the only way he could ask his soldiers to die. 3 hours into battle, a Drekanaar missile barrage struck the Perseverance. Voren watched as explosions tore through the ship's hull. Atmosphere vented into space. Fire spread across multiple decks. The Coalition observers assumed command would transfer to another vessel. Standard protocol demanded that a fleet admiral retreat when his ship was critically damaged. The Perseverance did not retreat. Instead, it accelerated. The burning flagship drove directly into the heart of the Drekanaar formation. Its remaining weapons fired continuously. Its engines pushed beyond their limits. Holloway's voice came over the open channel. He sounded calm, almost peaceful. All ships, this is Admiral Holloway. Follow me in. The entire human fleet surged forward. 2,000 ships, moving as one, charging into the enemy like a breaking wave. The Drekanaar lines shattered. What followed was not a battle. It was a storm. Ships twisted and burned. Explosions lit up the void. The neat formations dissolved into chaos as vessels from both sides fought at point-blank range. The Perseverance crashed into a Drekanaar command carrier, destroying both ships. But before it died, it had torn a hole in the enemy formation. Human ships poured through the gap. The battle lasted 3 days. 3 days of continuous fighting, without rest, without pause. Human pilots flew until they collapsed from exhaustion, then were replaced by fresh crews who flew until they collapsed too. On the 3rd day, the Drekanaar surrendered. Their fleet was broken. Their homeworld was surrounded. Their empire, built on centuries of conquest, had been brought to its knees by a species they had dismissed as prey. Voren recorded the surrender ceremony. The Drekanaar commander, one so proud and arrogant, bowed his head before the human delegation. The terms were unconditional. The Drekanaar Imperium was dissolved. Their conquered worlds were freed. Their war machine was dismantled. After the ceremony, Keth Voren requested permission to speak with Admiral Holloway. He expected to find the man celebrating. He found him standing alone in front of a memorial wall. The wall was covered with names. Millions of names carved into black stone. Every human who had died in the war was listed here. The letters were small to fit them all. The wall stretched for hundreds of meters. Holloway did not turn when Keth Voren approached. He just stood there, staring at the names. "Admiral," Keth Voren said, "congratulations on your victory." Holloway touched one of the names on the wall. His fingers traced the letters slowly. "This is my daughter," he said quietly. Katie Holloway Marsh. Lieutenant, first class. She died 6 months ago, defending a refugee convoy." Keth Voren remembered the young woman from the observation station, the one who had told him about Thermopylae. "I am sorry," he said. Holloway nodded. His face was blank, but his eyes were wet. "4,000,000," he said. 4,000,000 humans died in this war. Sons, daughters, mothers, fathers. 4,000,000 lives ended so that we could stand here today. He finally turned to face Keth Voren. "Was it worth it?" the archivist asked. Holloway's expression flickered. For a moment, the mask slipped, and Keth Voren saw the grief underneath. Then it returned. "Ask me something else." Keth Voren considered his words carefully. What should the galaxy know about humanity? Holloway looked at him. His eyes were tired and haunted, but somewhere deep inside, that old fire still burned. "Tell them this," he said. "We are not the strongest species in the galaxy. We are not the smartest. We are not the oldest or the most advanced. But we are the most stubborn. When we love something, we will die to protect it. When we commit to a fight, we do not stop until it is finished. The universe has tried to kill us 1,000 times. It has failed every time." He turned back to the wall of names. "And tell them one more thing. We take care of our own. Always." 50 years later, Keth Voren published his account of the Human-Draconair War. It became required reading across the Coalition. In his final chapter, he wrote, "I have lived for 3 centuries. I have watched empires rise and fall. I have seen species born and species die. But I have never witnessed anything like humanity's war. They should have lost. Every calculation demanded that they lose. They refused to accept the calculations. They refused to acknowledge their own weakness. They simply kept fighting until the universe bent to their will." He concluded with these words, "I saw humans march into war. I watched them bleed. I watched them die. I watched them win. And now I understand why the universe dreads them. It is not because they are powerful. It is not because they are ruthless. It is because they cannot be broken. Push them, and they push back. Hurt them, and they get angry. Corner them, and they become dangerous. The Draconair learned this lesson too late. I hope the rest of the galaxy learns it without making the same mistake." He closed his record and set down his writing tool. Outside his window, human ships passed through the stars. They were everywhere now, building, exploring, growing. The species that should have died had become one of the great powers of the galaxy. Keth Voren watched them go and felt that old fear stir in his hearts. Some species were meant to be feared, not because of what they were, but because of what they refused to stop being. Humanity would never stop, and that he knew was why the universe would always dread them.